gorgeous. Jolly good show. Oh, and he goes with the jack. Oh, nearly turns him upside down. Has a look down the inside. Oh, he gets it sideways. He's off. And at the front, Damon Hill spins. And they've got a collision. Oh, the car begins to break. Crashes over the curb. Whoa. Oh, he's in all sorts of trouble. Welcome to the final event of the 1995 Formula One World Driving Championship, the Grand Prix of Australia. G'day, mate. Bob Varsha along with Derek Daly. There you see Martin Brundle preparing for action in his Ligier. Today marks not only the final event of the 95 season, it is also the final Grand Prix of Australia to take place on the streets of Adelaide. And it will be a bittersweet experience for everyone involved. And you can be sure the Australians are involved. We may have the largest crowd in Formula One history, well over 200,000 people on hand to watch this race. Here's a look at the Drivers' Championship coming in. Michael Schumacher has his second straight title locked up. Damon Hill is in second. David Coulthard, Johnny Herbert, and Jean Alesi will all battle over the third place in the standings. In the Constructors' Championship, Benetton, Williams, and Ferrari are all locked in, but McLaren, Jordan, Ligier, and Sauber will all battle over fourth. And this weekend, McLaren is fighting with one hand tied behind their backs, figuratively speaking, because of what happened to Mika Hakkinen in Friday qualifying. Derek, tell us what happened.
It was a very scary crash for Mika Hakkinen, and the result is he is in serious condition in intensive care with head injuries. Watch the approach to the right-hander here. Watch the right front suspension off the ground. There's a punctured left rear tire. Watch the impact on his head inside the car. Smacks his head around. He is showing signs of improvement. He's awake and alert. Daily News, BMW has bought the McLaren Formula One road car project. Word on the street has former Brabham designer Gordon Murray designing a new BMW Formula One racing car for the 97 season. Blundell took a swipe at McLaren recently. He says there is a cancer in this team that needs to be cut out if this team is to get back to its winning ways. New Formula One team, the French Dams team, running the GD01, has been testing recently in the hands of Dutchman Jan Lammers. Will not race till 97. Michael Schumacher will be in the news next Thursday as he has his first seat fitting in the Ferrari and then will take his first test run. GQ magazine recently named Schumacher as #1 among the 60 most boring people in the world.
And when a London tabloid reprinted that poll, it set off a furor in Germany. Now, we just got a brief look there at the world map of the racecourse. Problems right there for Luca Badua on the starting grid. The rest of the field has already rolled off. Let's talk briefly about the racetrack, Derek.
Good overhead shots here of an unusually wide street circuit. Very bumpy. End of the long back straight is by far the best overtaking zone. Then the hairpin and the run down to the last corner at Foster's is where the brakes really take a punishing. And reliability is a key to being successful here in Adelaide.
Now let's move quickly through our starting lineup with the help of our last Prestone starting grid of the year. On the pole, Damon Hill alongside David Coulthard for the Williams-Renault team. On row 2, Michael Schumacher going for a pair of records today. Gerhard Berger, the only previous winner of this race in the field in the Ferrari. On row 3, Jean Alesi in the Ferrari alongside Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the highest-ranked V8 car in the field, though he's 10 miles an hour down to the quickest V10s. Rubens Barrichello and Johnny Herbert will be on row 4 in the Jordan and the Benetton. On row 5 will be Eddie Irvine, who turned 30 on Friday. He's in the Jordan, next to the only McLaren in the field, driven by Mark Blundell. On row 6, Martin Brundle back in the Ligier. He'll start alongside his teammate, Frenchman Olivier Panis. On row 7, Gianni Morbidelli in the footwork alongside the Tyrrell of Mika Salo. Row 8, Luca Badua of Italy in the Minardi and the Tyrrell of Japanese Ukio Katayama. Row 9, Pedro Lamy of Portugal in the Minardi and the Sauber of Carl Wendlinger. On row 10, Taki Inoue of Japan in the footwork and the 40 of Roberto Moreno. Row 11, Pedro Denitz and Andrea Montermini in the 40 and the Pacific. And all alone on row 12, Bertrand Gachot of France. Mika Hakkinen, of course, will not start the race, but he has improved remarkably over the last couple of days, and it appears that he will be all right. But now we have the business of starting the final race of the Formula One season. More than 200,000 Australians on hand on a very warm but fortunately dry afternoon. They are used to rain here in Australia, but we have beautiful conditions for what could be one of the best races of the year. We have the green flag from the back. We await the red light and then the green. Last race of 1995. Good launch for both Williams cars off the front row. Michael Schumacher edged by the Ferraris.
And a poor start for Michael Schumacher, who was so intent on getting to that first corner. First look at Johnny Herbert, gets himself into trouble. Everybody makes it through the center chicane just about safely.
The track is very bumpy. Of course, the Benetton has not been good on bumps all year. Michael Schumacher has struggled with the handling of his car. Part of it was down to a Duff shock absorber on Friday. But no one has been able to touch the Williams-Renault teammates here in Adelaide.
And David Coulthard has played second fiddle to Damon Hill all weekend, but not in this opening lap. He manages to pull one over Damon Hill, who again in the morning warm-up was the fastest car on the racetrack. Another look here at where Mika Hakkinen had that high-speed crash on Friday.
This is known as De Quetteville Terrace in normal workaday conditions here in Adelaide, but today it is the Jack Brabham straightaway. A brief look from on board one of the Ferraris, and down the inside goes Michael Schumacher.
Oh, see how he gets the back a bit sideways, gets twitchy, begins to lock up those rear brakes, forces the issue. A man on a mission. He's between the two Ferraris, but the two Williams boys beginning to edge away slightly. This is the last hairpin. Foster's.
Onto the Victoria Park grounds. All you see there in your picture is temporary. It is all built specifically for this race. There you see the race leader Coulthard out of the park grounds and on to the streets of Adelaide. The track 2.34 miles around, 81 race laps scheduled.
Coulthard's never been here before. Took him a little bit of time to learn the racetrack on Friday. Said he was a little bit lost, very bumpy, not sure of the concrete, how close it was. He looks anything but tentative right now. Look at EDS, the main sponsors here of this Australian Grand Prix. Of course, EDS also the timing system of note for Indy cars.
A company founded by Ross Perot, doing billions of dollars of business worldwide, including just having signed a big contract with the government of South Australia, and hence part of their sponsorship. Another look at the start. Michael Schumacher there from the second row. You see getting waxed off the line by the Ferrari.
And certainly not a jump start. The two Ferrari boys furious at the Japanese Grand Prix when they were given the 10-second penalties for what they alleged was not a jump start, but Schumacher certainly caught in one of the worst starts of his season so far. Because this is so far.
Now Schumacher aims to make up for it. Down to the line they come. Gerhard Berger leading Michael Schumacher. The top six in the warm-up were Hill and Coulthard, Schumacher, Johnny Herbert, who started in the 8th spot, but he was 4th quickest in the warm-up on full tanks. Heinz-Harald Frentzen going very well in a very fine handling Sauber this weekend, and Rubens Barrichello going well in the Jordan. Noticeably absent in the warm-up were the Ferraris, who struggled at mid-pack.
Schumacher has nothing to lose. He has no championship hanging over his head. He's already the champion. He can go for broke here against the Ferrari. That is his car for next season. This is entering the long back straight where he passed the Lacey into the braking zone. How quickly can he exit onto the Brabham straight?
That previous straightaway named for Alan Jones, the Australian world champion of 1980. You ride on the front of Damon Hill's Williams.
Oh, you saw what he did there. He went inside first, realized he wasn't going to make it. Then he had to go to the outside. He looks quicker than Berger exiting these medium speed corners. You can't drive over the top of him, though. You have to go around him.
That sound was me giving myself a slap. Of course, that was Michael Schumacher's nose camera looking at the back of the Ferrari. And look at the gap already opened up by the Williams teammates. Coulthard and Hill have checked out.
They are 7 seconds clear, 6 seconds clear of Berger, who is very conscious now of Schumacher being in his rear view mirror. Berger, the most successful Grand Prix driver here in the 11 years in Adelaide, has scored more World Championship points than any other Formula One driver. Hill set fastest lap, and now David Coulthard responds and takes it back.
Like most street circuits, as the rubber is laid down, these cars could get quicker and quicker. We expect the race lap to change hands throughout the afternoon. There you see Andrea Montermini in replay going around. Big problems for the Pacific team. They were to have a new driver in the team this weekend. British star Oliver Gavin was to join the team, but his super license, which was granted to him earlier this year, expired because he had failed to sign it. Making the whole situation even more convoluted was the fact that Gavin's family, that is suing the Pacific team for monies paid into the team last year, for which a ride was not forthcoming.
See the gap holding steady between David Coulthard and Damon Hill. Damon Hill much more experienced here. In fact, he has gone remarkably well here every year he's been here. This is his third trip to Australia. You can never forget what happened last year in the World Championship fight with Schumacher when it all ended in a big crash. He could have been world champion. Instead, Schumacher became world champion. This is the tight, bumpy section. Down through Wakefield, the East Terrace, down through the S's, and then on to this Jones Straight.
Damon Hill takes the fast lap. Rocketing on to Duquetteville Terrace. Teammate Coulthard in the foreground. Coulthard doing a great job this weekend, coming to grips with the racetrack when it matters most on Sunday afternoon.
Here's the braking zone for the hairpin. Will Schumacher go down the inside? Here we go. Here we go. Oh, Berger forced him. Whoa, talk about trying to force the issue. Berger made it difficult, and Schumacher kept the charge.
Into Victoria Park. This is a horse race track. You see the Stewards Towers. All of this track is buried throughout the rest of the year. And this being the last race on the streets of Adelaide, in all likelihood, it will be dug up. All of the grandstands and the buildings have been sold to the owners of the future home of the Australian Grand Prix. Next March 10th, the Formula One season will begin in Albert Park in Melbourne, about 500 miles south of here.
Just glorious sounds from that Ferrari V12. Now, let's keep a close eye on the gap now to see what happens, whether Schumacher can make some inroads into that fastest lap. Now again being reset by David Coulthard. The line of cars behind Gerhard Berger and Alesi now. Frentzen a sixth, and Johnny Herbert in the second of the Benettons, having one of his best weekends here. Got within 8/10 of Michael Schumacher. That's a pretty good weekend for any number 2 driver at Benetton.
While the action settles down just a bit, we'll take a quick timeout and return for more of the final event of the Formula One season. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Formula One Grand Prix of Australia, is brought to you by Texaco Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Take it to the star. Welcome back to Adelaide, Australia, and round 17, final event of the 1995 Formula One World Championship. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly, glad to have you with us on this Veterans Day weekend. In Australia, it's known as Remembrance Day, and there were 2 minutes of silence on Saturday in honor of the war heroes. The running order is David Coulthard, Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher, Gerhard Berger. There you see the field summary. You are watching Heinz-Harald Frentzen trying to hold off Johnny Herbert for 6th spot.
What a great run he's had here all weekend, unlike his teammate. Oh, another Pacific. Gasho just slips off. He was running in 21st place. A part owner of this team luckily keeps it all in one piece. You're on board with Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert running 7th. I mentioned earlier the Sauber teammate Wendlinger has had a terrible time here. Crashed heavily on Friday. Couldn't drive on Saturday. Wrenched his thumb. Got whiplash in the neck. Couldn't drive this morning more than 5 or 6 laps in the warm-up. So the last chance to save his Formula One career might be beginning to slip away from Frentzen's teammate, Karl Wendlinger.
Good battle here. Frentzen getting great handling out of the Sauber chassis this weekend, but he has that V8 Zetec R Ford engine, not up to the Renault V10 that resides behind the back of that man, Johnny Herbert, just behind him.
Herbert still doesn't have employment for next season. He jokingly said, I've got a go-kart drive lined up. That's the only thing if I need that. Hopefully he won't need that. Some people say he may be due to come to the States to test the Pac West IndyCar in the near future. Mark Blundell may also be trying to beat him into that seat for a test with the Pac West team.
Which raises a good point. Of the top 12 qualifiers for this race, only 3 will be back with their same team next year. Those 3, Damon Hill, of course, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and Rubens Barrichello. Olivier Panis with the Ligier team, who qualified 12th, is still not sure where he's going to be next year. The Ligier spokesman this weekend denied rumors that they had signed Panis for next year. So of the top 12, only 3 will be back with the same team in 1996. Here's a look at some of the seats still open for 1996. The silly season has gone on for some time. These are not key seats. Obviously, the choice one in that group would be with Sauber. There you see some of the unsigned drivers. What's unique about this list, Johnny Herbert has 2 Grand Prix victories this year. Mark Blundell has done a terrific job for McLaren, standing in for Nigel Mansell when he left the team. Remember that way back last spring? Jos Verstappen, we believe, has come to terms with Jackie Oliver to drive for the Arrows team next year.
You mentioned Nigel Mansell, and we discussed this earlier before we went on the air, that it's interesting that Mark Blundell concurs with a lot of what Nigel Mansell was criticized for saying in his book about the cancer that McLaren has that needs to be cut out completely if that team is to get back anywhere near the glory days of the past. Oh, gets it sideways under power. Damon Hill trying to catch his teammate David Coulthard. Sometimes this looks easy, but between the concrete barriers here on these street circuits, you're absolutely on the limit, fighting the car that is trying to get away from you at every instant. And in a race this long, it is so easy to make those small mistakes. But as we said earlier, there is nothing at stake here, so you can let it all hang out and just show how good you are. And Damon Hill needs a good race here because he has had a disastrous second half of the season.
All right, numerologists, get your pens and papers out. Damon Hill's pole for this race was his 11th. He picked it up in the 11th race on the streets of Adelaide. He secured it on the 11th day of the 11th month of the year, hoping to improve on his career total of Grand Prix victories, which presently stands at 11.
And he says if Michael Schumacher wins today, that Damon Hill wants to create a record next year of winning 11 Grand Prix races. He didn't really say that, but I just made it up.
There is the man, Michael Schumacher. Hill, Schumacher, Gerhard Berger, and the FIA safety officer, Roland Broinserata, toured the circuit on Friday night after Mika Häkkinen's huge crash and hospitalization. They decided to add tires to the wall where Häkkinen went in. Too late to help Häkkinen, of course. There was only a 1-layer tire wall facing the concrete where Häkkinen went in. That has been expanded to 3 for this race.
These are great camera shots of just how hard Michael Schumacher is driving this Benetton. You see the car begin to fight as he turns in. Fights for grip when he straightens it up. Bounces over the bumps. This car does not like the bumps. We mentioned that earlier. But often it makes for great TV pictures. David Coulthard now in the mix of traffic. One of the 40 cars. And Taki Inoue, who's not known for looking in his mirrors. David Coulthard needs to clear. Oh, he doesn't clear him yet. Safely down the inside. Mind you, you're never safe till you're all the way past Taki Inoue. Moreno waves him through. Moreno sees Damon Hill. Waves him through down past the pits. Now the danger zone for Damon Hill. And he clears him.
The Wakefield Terrace. Then to East Terrace.
So Carl Wendlinger has officially retired from this race and maybe from Formula One. He said the neck pain is too severe, a result of the injury from his Friday crash. So his day is over and maybe his Formula One career is over. And this man is very much on the rise in his Formula One career, David Coulthard.
What is ominous about Wendlinger's injury, if that's what it is, was that he said he has had it before, that whiplash effect. When the road is too bumpy, his spine simply cannot take it. And that is very bad news for Carl Wendlinger, trying desperately to get back in Grand Prix racing after his huge accident at Monaco a year ago. David Coulthard leads Damon Hill. We'll be right back. Back to Adelaide, Australia. 11th and final time Formula One cars will grace the street circuits of the hub of the South Australia province or state. Coming up later today here on ESPN, the windup of the NASCAR Winston Cup season. Darrell Waltrip, of all people. DW is on pole for the Napa 500, coming up live at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific, here on ESPN. One car drops out, and Jeff Gordon is your 1995 Winston Cup champion.
So DW looks good in NASCAR, and DC is in control here in Australia. Damon Hill, you saw, just set fastest lap. David Coulthard got caught in traffic in the last lap and a half, but when he's by himself, he seems to be able to stretch just that little cushion over Damon Hill. So David Coulthard showing McLaren that they better build a good car. As Taki Inoue says, no matter what car you give me, I'll probably throw it at the fence. Yes, he does.
So that removes one more car from the event. Inoue unofficially the 4th car out, leaving 19 cars still in the race.
Under braking, Michael Schumacher scares the daylights out of him. He sees him in his mirrors, locks up the rear brakes, gets on the curbs, kisses the concrete, and goes home for an early shower.
Or in the case of Adelaide, heads for the nearest party. It is hard to overstate the enthusiasm with which the Aussies put on a show here in Adelaide. The parties have been non-stop since the circus rolled into town back on Tuesday. And at some of the races we've been to this year, as you watch Schumacher continuing to try to work his way through traffic, now he has Taki Inoue's countryman, Ukio Katayama, behind him.
And of course, he's in his personal fight with Pedro Lamy. That is 15th and 16th places.
Picking up my point, at some of the races we've been to this year, as you look at a field summary, the Formula One race will be the only thing going on that weekend. And in other words, for your hundreds of dollars of ticket money, you will see a couple of practices and qualifying sessions every day, and then a warm-up and a race on Sunday. Here in Adelaide, on Saturday alone, there were 7 races, 1 qualifying session for a race that was held today on Sunday, plus 15 airplane flyovers, parachute drops, plus half a dozen pit walks and parades of one sort or another around this street circuit. Great value for money in Adelaide.
And one of the best displays was from the U.S. Marines, who flew F-18 Hornets Would you believe below 800 feet? It thrilled everybody, but you're right, it's hard to overstate just how enthusiastic this crowd is. In fact, Eddie Irvine ran some displays last Sunday up and down this front straight. And in fact, 2 weeks ago when the Japanese Grand Prix was on here, they had giant TV screens mounted in the pit lane. 25,000 people came out. Johnny Herbert gets it all out of control, trying to pass Frentzen, and Frentzen gets the position back.
That was for 6th place. Herbert had it briefly. Frentzen takes it back. You can bet Johnny Herbert is doing his best to kick himself inside that Benetton Renault. Here's another look.
He's down the inside, he breaks too late. Frentzen locks it up and Herbert locks the rears and can't turn into the apex. Frentzen says, thank you very much. On your bike, turns in and takes it back.
And Pedro Denitz managed to sneak by as well and unlap himself. Up front, David Coulthard of Scotland as his teammate Damon Hill heads for the pits. This is on lap 19.
This is an interesting move. With two teams like this, we have a helmet cam, a crew cam.
D-compound Goodyear tires, the softest compound used in Formula One racing on a regular basis. Also used at the Hungaroring and at Monaco.
9.1 seconds, and stopping so early suggests Damon Hill will go on a 3-stop strategy. We have yet to find out what David Coulthard will be on, and Berger probably also on a 3-stop. There was rumors that Berger might do a swap and move to Williams and Damon Hill go to Benetton. Damon Hill was absolutely disgusted with the British press that they would even consider printing such stories, and then he realized, he said, it has to go with the territory. Me on holiday in Bali is a boring story, so they have to make up something else, but livid with the British press.
Berger will be in the Benetton next year as you watch. Now David Coulthard will make his first stop of the race. Oh! What was that? He couldn't get it stopped or turned, and David Coulthard has taken himself out of the race.
DC, big mistake. We've seen this man make huge mistakes on the warm-up lap, and now he leads the last Grand Prix of the season, and he throws it all away in the pit lane. Got it out of control on the right-hander, and that will make one of his most embarrassing moments so far in Formula One.
He has shown so much brilliance in the second half of this season, including a string of 4 straight poles. He has led, he has won.
Comes in too fast, trying to get it down to 50 miles an hour, misses the turn-in point. He's on the sand and the dust. He has complained about that sand and dust all weekend. Here it is in car. Is that oil? Is that oil in the middle of the racetrack? Did that contribute to him losing control? Whoa, what's left for suspension? And Frank Williams' expression never changed. And as has happened so many times this year, Michael Schumacher begins to take advantage. If he's not the fastest car on the racetrack, he somehow finds a way to get himself into the lead. Can he make 2 pit stops to Damon Hill's 3 and win this race? Let's have another look at David Coulthard's crash. He comes off the racetrack. This is the last right-hander, peels down to the right-hand side, doesn't lose enough speed, can't make the turn-in, gets on the dust. That's when he loses grip. And then he is on a one-way ticket to the concrete wall when you get onto that sand, and David Coulthard has his most embarrassing moment yet.
And with that, David Coulthard's career as a Williams driver is over. He becomes a McLaren Mercedes driver. And we have news about upcoming tests. The teams have agreed to release their drivers. We will see Formula One drivers with their new teams within days following this event, including that man, Michael Schumacher, who leads Damon Hill by 1.8 seconds.
Oh, if Schumacher is on a 2-stop strategy here, we could have frustration. We could have frustration all over the face of Frank Williams. We've seen that before. And Damon Hill. That's how close it is. It was 1.8. He's gained half a second. David Coulthard has been to his pit. The explanation he gave was it understeered into the wall. We did see that as Barrichello understeers into the tire wall. The engine is still running. Can he grab reverse?
Schumacher pits. The race leader is in. 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Here is a state-of-the-art pit crew at work.
Our reporter in the pit lane, who was there, Eric Silverman, was the first man to get that information from David Coulthard. So Johnny on the spot. David Coulthard went to him. He is so aware of the American audience. And of course, he is one of IndyCar's biggest fans, watching his very good friend, Gilles de Ferran, every time he steps foot onto the racetrack. Frentzen, good stuff for him. 8.8. Hear the rev limiter. 50 miles an hour, then drop the clutch and leave more of those black streaks at the end of that pit lane.
Damon Hill back out front and having to make time over Michael Schumacher, who is out there on fresh tires now and will be closing up quickly. Jean Alesi runs between them. Johnny Herbert just behind them. Eddie Irvine and Gerhard Berger round out the top 6. We'll be right back. Back at Adelaide, Australia, there is Jean Alesi. You see the damage to his front wing as he pits. The reason is he hit Michael Schumacher. Here it is.
Schumacher is down the inside. They get wheel-to-wheel contact. Schumacher gets sideways, and Alesi just clips him with the right front wing. Remember, these are carbon fiber. They're very brittle, and they simply break off now. The easiest thing to do also is to cut down the right rear tire or the left rear tire on Michael Schumacher's Benetton. We will watch very closely for that, but a very costly mistake for Jean Alesi, or a costly moment for Jean Alesi.
And there will be debris on the racetrack at that corner. The two cars were running second and third at the time. Damon Hill leads. Schumacher runs in second. Johnny Herbert is now third. Eddie Irvine fourth. Gerhard Berger fifth.
Great pit stop for the Ferrari to change the nose. Here it is again. Schumacher already has the corner. Look at Alesi. Interlocks wheels. No need for that. That's what put him in trouble. Touches him. Breaks the left front wing, the right front wing. And has he done any damage to Michael Schumacher's left rear tire? Pedro Lamy spins the Minardi backwards, and has he stalled the engine? No, keeps it running. Was running in 13th place. Does a 180, does another 180, and does a 90, and gets away with it.
It's an all skate. Now Schumacher is in.
Here's the answer. Here's the answer. He definitely must have punctured that left rear tire. So he was running second. That will drop him down the order. The mechanics have a look. Brand new tires go on the Benetton. It's a slow stop. It is a slow stop. They have to check everything. He will have reported that something feels strange and unusual. Crashed last year out of the race. They say it's okay.
Checking that suspension.
Johan Villers-de-Plat, the Dutchman, team manager for Benetton. That was him just walking away to the left-hand side, satisfied that everything was okay. But Schumacher now falls down the order, and Eddie Irvine takes the Jordan into the top 3 as Alesi is done.
And with that, Jean Alesi's career at Ferrari comes to an unhappy conclusion. ...102 Grand Prix. Oh! Roberto Moreno has spun it.
What is going on here? Moreno's right rear suspension is broken. That's why he will probably not take any more part in today's events. But did somebody drop oil or something? Suddenly, in the space of a lap and a half, we've seen 3 or 4 people get themselves in serious trouble, and Damon Hill keeps himself away from trouble. Running clear of the field, Johnny Herbert is second, Eddie Irvine is third.
Gerhard Berger runs 4th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 5th. Martin Brundle in 6th. Here's Eddie Irvine in the pits. That will take him from 3rd place on lap 25. Eddie Irvine and Michael Schumacher will have their seat fittings at Ferrari. Schumacher will be there next week, as Derek mentioned at the top of our show. This is the new Senna chicane. The chicane is not new. The name is. Onto Wakefield Terrace. Michael Schumacher will drive the car briefly, and then a full test will take place on November 20th with many of the top Formula One teams and their new drivers in attendance. Michael Schumacher runs 7th, shooting for his 10th victory of the year, which would be a new Formula One record. He is also trying to eclipse Nigel Mansell's record for points scored in a season. Mansell's mark 108, set back in his championship year of 1992. Eddie Irvine back out there running in the 6th spot. We'll be back. Australia, this is the world champion Michael Schumacher back in the pits, his team looking under the rear of the car. He must feel something wrong.
And suddenly it all goes wrong. So many things this year have gone his way. Trouble befalls everybody else, and suddenly he has to take his fair share. That's Pat Simmons, his engineer, to the left of the picture in radio contact. He said, "Your day is over, Michael." His career is now over with Benetton, and what a team they built around Michael Schumacher. What will happen to this team now that he leaves and many other of the key people may leave? But a shame to see the world champion out, because he is such a charger, and that allows people like Martin Brundle to slip up into the top 6, now running in 5th place ahead of Eddie Irvine.
Meanwhile, out on the racetrack, that is Mark Blundell up into the 7th spot. And he has Damon Hill right behind him. So Hill about to lap up to 6th place. There you see the top 6 in points where they're running. Michael Schumacher is gone. He has had no luck at all over the years here at Adelaide. Damon Hill leads. David Coulthard is gone after a bizarre incident when he hit the pit wall from the inside. Johnny Herbert runs in 4th, John O'Lacey 5th, and Gerhard Berger 6th. Excuse me, runs 3rd, 6th in points. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, there are several positions in the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship that will be decided here today. 3rd place very much up for grabs now that David Coulthard is out of the race. Up to 190 miles per hour on the Brabham Straight. And hard on the brakes.
No technical developments of note to the cars here in Australia, as you can imagine. They've been on the road for such a long time. 315 tons of equipment, which incidentally is twice as much as they brought here back in 1985. Such is the pace of Formula One development that they now need twice as much tonnage just to come to the other side of the world to race here. The whole Formula One family has been on the road for almost a month now in a season that closes so late compared to most other single-seater formulas.
They travel in 3 Boeing 747s, and much of that weight is in the new electronics. Some of the computers that reside in the back of the garages monitoring engine and chassis functions weigh as much as 2 tons apiece. Now in the scoring department, Damon Hill is now secure in 2nd place with David Coulthard out of the race, but Coulthard's position is in trouble. Johnny Herbert is presently running 2nd. That's worth 6 points. That would put him past Coulthard into 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. And what a boost that would be for Herbert.
And this is the difference between a World Championship potential car and a Tyrrell, because you saw him slingshot off that curb to go down past the inside of the Tyrrell. Here's a slow-mo replay of Jean Alesi's right front wing breaking off the car. Now that could have also caused Schumacher to get some damage, which may have been his handling problem. Damon Hill past the Tyrrell onto the front straight. No need to be a hero here. He doesn't need to take any chances. All he needs to do is take this FW17B home, clear of the rest of the field, and notch up win number 12. 7 pole positions this year. Could have won the World Championship. Many people believe this was the fastest car. Certainly at the end of the season, it developed into potentially the fastest car as we slip back and watch Johnny Herbert over the curbs and in all sorts of trouble.
Was he aiming for the pit lane?
It almost looked as if he was on his way to the pit lane. Came in way too fast, locked it up, and of course when he locked it up, he went over that paint. When you get onto that painted surface, then you lose most of the grip that you have. And Johnny Herbert was lucky to get away with that one. Here it is again. Yes, he's coming into the pit lane, realizes he's way too fast, over the curb. Watch the paint on the painted surface. And Johnny Herbert, who is poised in the perfect position. He loves to win from running second on the road. Here it is again. Crashes over the top of the curb. Somebody else has been off there already. I wonder, is there oil on this racetrack dropped by somebody in that particular area that is causing lots of these problems.
There you see the running order of the top 6. 10, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. The points distribution there. We'll see if Johnny Herbert stops this time around, which will probably answer the question about whether he was aiming for the pit lane in the first place.
I'm sure he was, while his teammate Michael Schumacher is absolutely furious. Yes, he has peels off. Schumacher is furious and livid in the pit lane, physically pushing and abusing cameramen, will not speak to anybody because the left front wishbone of the Benetton was found to be broken as a result, no doubt, of that debris flying off Jean Alesi's Ferrari. So the world's most unpopular man, according to GQ, has now made a few more enemies.
Well, I didn't say he was unpopular. What the GQ poll apparently said was that he was #1 among the 60 most boring people in the world.
Okay, I'm sorry, then he'll become one of the most unpopular.
As your lawyer, I would advise you to change that. Anyway, the Daily Mirror in London republished that poll. The German magazine Bild published the fact that the Daily Mirror had published it, and the Germans are all upset with the Brits, whereas I suspect that, isn't it an American magazine that published the original poll? Nevertheless, the international intrigue of Formula One. Hill, Berger, Frentzen, Herbert, Irvine, and Blundell, your top 6. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of Australia. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. There is Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber, presently running in 3rd spot. Now, while we were away, we had reports of extra spins right here at the final right-hander at the pit entrance onto the front straightaway. Both Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell have gone around at that point. Did not see it, but that is the report from Timing and Scoring. Our pictures coming to us from Channel 9 in Australia. Former world champ Alan Jones and former motorcycle racing champion Barry Sheen are their commentators for this event.
And you might notice that Channel 9 Australia, our host broadcaster, gives a lot more in-car cameras than any other of the directors we are normally working with. I think they are racers down under in Australia, and they're watching this fight at the moment because there was fireworks earlier when Frentzen and Johnny Herbert got together, and Herbert again trying to chase him down, having made that mistake earlier of missing his pit entrance. Blundell brings it in.
The sole and only McLaren in this race.
Unemployed as of the end of the day. Word has it he may be one of 11 drivers to test the Pac West car very soon. Here's Mark Blundell over the curb. That is Panis behind him.
Something exciting about to happen? I guess not.
Well,
did something come off the car?
there was a piece of debris, and I watched to see did it actually come off his car, or did it fall off somebody else's and Blundell simply run over it. Bob, you mentioned last race about the steering wheel that was... I'll get back to that story in just a second, because that was a Ferrari that was off the road. Yes, something fell off, and that is Gerhard Berger. So the second of the Ferraris is at boiling point. A sad day to Gerhard Berger, the most successful driver in the amount of points scored here. 33 points he has scored since he has started racing here in 1985. Next nearest man to him was 28.
And the most prolific Grand Prix racer in Ferrari history. Gerhard Berger, with this cloud of steam, is no longer a Ferrari driver, and he will head for Benetton's first big test later this month.
I mentioned that Senna steering wheel that you mentioned at the auction of this Japanese Grand Prix that sold for $14,000 as we watch about $114,000 worth of damage go on here to the Ferrari V12. In fact, it was Bruce McCaw, the owner of Pac West, as we watch the Ferrari Côte de Parc Fermé. Bruce McCaw bought that steering wheel, and he assures me that in fact it was $1,400. At least that's what he told his lovely wife to be, Jolene, and of course Jolene still believes it was $1,400.
Have to check the exchange rate on yen.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Damon Hill remains out front as the field continues to dwindle down to 13 cars remaining at this race, and we are barely past the halfway mark.
Here's a couple of boys arguing over that inside line. Blundell not in this fight. Frentzen trying to hold off Johnny Herbert. Let's just listen here. Well,
sounded like static to me.
That was the old microwave signal from the racing car to the helicopter that got disturbed on one of the underpasses or overpasses. Look at Frentzen, furious with Mark Blundell, waves his fist to the flagman as he goes by the starter stand trying to say, get that McLaren out of my way.
And the reason is, in part, because Johnny Herbert just behind him is in third place, and this will quickly become a battle over second as Mark Blundell holds up the train.
Frentzen in second, Johnny Herbert in third. Herbert has nothing to lose. Throw caution to the wind. These cars are disposable items here in Australia because you either score a good result or you have no more opportunity. Now Herbert, at the end of the long straight, is where he made an attack the last time. Oh, Frentzen's a long way behind. Can he make a lunge down the inside? Let's watch. Oh, he tries to force the issue. Oh, he hits him. Does he hit him?
Very close, but that allows Johnny Herbert to pounce.
Look at this. Side by side now almost with Herbert and Frentzen. Frentzen will be absolutely furious now at Blundell. Blundell is seventh. He's about to be lapped. These are the leading cars. Does he wave his fist? Over to the as good as a fist wave. He's on the radio telling his crew, get Blundell out of my way. Here's how close it got. Watch the left front. Just slicks the left front and just manages to stay off the back of the McLaren. Hear the brake shudder. At least Blundell gets himself on television. The McLaren has not been a good car here all weekend. Tends to like high-speed corners using the latest version of the Mercedes V10. Oh, he's closer this time. He is closer this time to a run down this Brabham straight. Watch the action in the braking zone. Here we go. Here we go. No argument. Clean pass. Where's Herbert? Oh, he makes it easy for Herbert. Lets him go through. That'll make Frentzen even more furious.
Interesting that Mark Blundell is using the new spec Mercedes that was just gangbusters in Japan. And there you saw it run on even terms by the V8 Zetec R Ford. Interesting comparison. But now the Ford and the Renault are by, and they are off into a battle of their own. We'll be back in a moment. Damon Hill, the race leader, heads for the pits as we return to the streets of Adelaide, Australia. 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Beautiful, brilliant, clear day.
They're down the end of the pit lane. They get the choice. Good so far.
This action on lap number 39 of 81. So this is Hill's second stop. And we are at the halfway point.
And two pretty good stops for a team that has not been stellar in the pit lane this year. Beaten comprehensively by Benetton so many times. In fact, Patrick Head has said publicly they are not at a championship level yet. This team has a lot of learning to go through before they are consistent front runners.
Let's take another look now at the pass that Heinz-Harald Frentzen was finally able to achieve on Mark Blundell, and watch his reaction as he goes by his rival.
Notice that universal signal from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Now, if he was an IndyCar driver, he's in trouble here. He is in trouble. But if Heinz-Harald Frentzen was an IndyCar driver, that would have relieved him of at least $5,000 for...
I thought that was only if you did it at an official. Can you do it to another driver?
No, if you do it to the in-car camera, maybe that was his punishment right there. So Frentzen, having had a superb run all the way to second place, throws the steering wheel out in disgust, and Johnny Herbert takes full advantage and moves up to second place.
It remains to be seen if Heinz-Harald Frentzen will share his bottle of post-race champagne with Mark Blundell. Somehow I doubt it. Damon Hill, meanwhile, remarkably error-free performance, above all the chaos that has broken out behind him, including several collisions, one of which took his rival Michael Schumacher out of the race, as well as Jean Alesi. Gerhard Berger has blown up in the other Ferrari, and various drivers have flown off the racetrack at a number of different points, but most specifically right at the pit entrance.
While the Williams team are away in Japan and Australia, as you look at your top 10 or your top qualifiers and where they're now running. But while the Williams team are away at these last two races, they will go home to a brand new factory. In fact, there was a huge commotion at Didcot, Oxford just last week when they had to move their wind tunnel. That was a huge exercise. And in fact, at one stage, they considered using a helicopter. But a brand new factory and a new home for the Williams Grand Prix team when they go back. Eddie Irvine comes in, running in the top three. Another good pit stop for the Jordan team. Last race for Jordan. For this Maverick, Eddie Irvine. And Panis in the Ligier is who he is trying to beat out to maintain that third place, which I'm sure he will, because Panis is one lap down to the top three runners.
Meanwhile, the top two have gone by. Eddie Irvine is a lap down in third. 11 cars remain in the running. We are going to challenge the record for attrition, it would appear. Laps past halfway at the Grand Prix of Australia, and 11 cars remain in the race, led by this man, Damon Hill. The record for attrition in this race was set in 1985, the first year in which 8 cars finished. It was matched in 1989, one of 3 years in which this race was absolutely drenched by springtime rains. Yes, it is springtime in the Southern Hemisphere. Christmas decorations all over the city of Adelaide to go with these warm temperatures. Don't forget, coming up tonight on ESPN2, RPM tonight with Kenny Mayne. We'll have highlights of today's race. Derek Daly will be in to analyze with Kenny. We'll also have all the action from Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend as NASCAR winds up its season. RPM tonight on ESPN 2 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Damon Hill well in control. He didn't have it all his own way. He was off the road a couple of times on Friday, didn't hit anything but had a few straight ons. They had a problem with the braking system. It was nervous under braking and the drivers didn't have confidence. And Damon Hill said it was easier to just go straight on rather than try and scrabble around the corner and try and risk touching some concrete. But he is well on his way to another Grand Prix win. And Johnny Herbert, who is still trying to wave the flag, and any team manager that will listen or will have enough budget to run him. Ken Tyrrell is trying his best to put a package around Johnny Herbert. There were rumors, in fact, that he had already tested for Tyrrell in England. He denied those rumors when he got here. But certainly the drive he seems to be chasing hardest of all is the Tyrrell, because he feels that the Sauber opportunities may not be available to him.
The running order is Hill, Herbert, Irvine, Panis, Morbidelli, Blundell, Salo, Lamy, Katayama, Denitz, and Gacho. The 11 cars still in the race. More than 205,000 people bought tickets for today's event here in Adelaide. As you watch Eddie Irvine, the total over the 3 days of the event, over 500,000, and more than $11 million in tickets sold. Those are double the previous highs here in Adelaide. So obviously the question this weekend was, why is the race being moved if it is such a huge success? Formula One organizer Bernie Ecclestone said, well, if you were this crazy about your race a few years ago, we might not have moved it to Melbourne. Bernie Ecclestone was also asked about the future of a Formula One race in America, and he had some very unkind things to say about the standard of American racetracks.
He actually said, and this was a quote, that American racetracks are so bloody dangerous. He said there isn't one that we could go and race on. I don't think he's seen the plans yet for the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, because that will certainly be the new arena for Formula One to look at, and may give Bernie some ideas about how to construct a road racing circuit within a complex where everybody in every seat can see every corner. That might be something new to Formula One.
Bernie wasn't the only one beating up on Americans. Niki Lauda, the former three-time world champion, who was an advisor to the Ferrari team, was asked what he thought of the high driver retainers these days and whether he thought he was gypped by racing when he did in the 70s. He said, well, it's too bad I was born in Austria. If I were born an American, I could sue my mother for having given birth to me too soon and preventing me from making all this money. Ouch, rat.
Interestingly enough, the Super Rat was the first man to make $1 million as a racing driver, which at that stage was astronomical for a racing driver. So he didn't do too badly.
And you see the gap from Herbert back to Irvine. All of a sudden there are large chunks of the Adelaide streets between most of our 11 competitors.
And Johnny Herbert is one of the few cars on a two-stop strategy. So he will stop one more time. Damon Hill, we think, will stop one more time. And Eddie Irvine, I think he is also down to stop one more time.
A gearbox apparently felled Hind-Harold Frentzen. In fact, I was thinking about Frentzen as I watched Damon Hill. There were rumors going around that Frank Williams has signed Frentzen to an option for 1997, which would be very interesting given his relationship, Frentzen's that is, with Ford. It's going to be an interesting off-season before Formula One returns to Australia on March 10th for the Grand Prix of Australia in Melbourne. We'll be back in a moment. We are back in Adelaide, Australia, as race leader Damon Hill goes around Mark Blundell, presently running in 6th spot. Good look at the race leader making the pass. We are in South Australia, home to most of Australia's great vintages. If you're a wine connoisseur and you like Australian wines, Barossa Valley, McLaren Vale, Clare Valley, things like that, all grown here in South Australia, which also holds the distinction of being the only state in this enormous country that did not accept convicts, which of course was how a lot of this country was settled back in the 1800s when it was founded. Known as the City of Churches, Adelaide, Australia, making its 11th and final appearance on the Formula One calendar. Now this weekend, the Adelaide organizers made one last appeal to the FIA, the international governing body, to leave Adelaide on the schedule as perhaps the home of the Pacific Grand Prix. But FIA President Max Mosley immediately put the kibosh on that, saying if the Pacific Grand Prix goes anywhere but AIDA, Japan, it will go somewhere in the Far East, perhaps Indonesia, Malaysia, or possibly even Zhuhai in China. Mark Blundell, who bears the legend, The Will to Win, on his helmet, handed down to him by his grandfather, who says the only McLaren in the race following following Mika Hakkinen's big accident on Friday that has left him in the hospital in the care of Formula One doctor Professor Sid Watkins and the staff of the Royal Adelaide Hospital.
Damon Hill now back embroiled in traffic. Just has to be careful. He has no real challenges, so Katayama, who you can see looking in the mirror, it's not that easy though to pull off line when you're in the tight section here. They still reach speeds up to 140 miles an hour through these S's. Through the S's here, get on the brakes. This is 65 miles an hour here before you accelerate. Now you reach 150 miles an hour before you turn in here. The slowest speed of that corner is over 100 miles an hour, and then it's almost 193 miles an hour down the long Brabham Straight, and stand the thing on its nose with those carbon fiber brakes. Not power assisted anymore. However, these cars do still have power steering. The Williams FW17B. Now, it is now, when it's as the 17B, it's as it was designed. Yes, as it was supposed to run at the start of the season. However, the FW16 gearbox was what the season was started with, and that stayed on way too long for Frank Williams' liking. They won't tell you when you ask them as to why it took so long to get the 17B version out. But Adrian Newey is happy to tell you it was originally conceived in this form here, which would have given Damon Hill a nice advantage over Michael Schumacher, or an even bigger advantage over Michael Schumacher throughout this season.
Johnny Herbert cruises along in second place. There you see a comparison of the times for he and Hill. We'll take another timeout and return to the streets of Adelaide in a moment. We are back in Adelaide, Australia. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly with you. There you see the running order, the top 6. 5 other cars remain in the race. In the Australian Grand Prix 1995, there's Olivier Panis. As mentioned, the Ligier team refuses to confirm. In fact, what they did was they denied a rumor that they had re-signed Panis. How much have things changed over the years since this race was first held back in 1985? Back then, the pole sitter was the late Ayrton Senna in a Renault turbo-powered Lotus, starting alongside Nigel Mansell in a Williams Honda. Niki Lauda retired from the race and ended his Formula One career. Helio De Angelis, who also died in a Formula One test years ago, was disqualified from the race for a false start. The top 6 at the end of the day: Keke Rosberg in a Williams, Jacques Lafitte and Philippe Streff in Ligers, Ivan Capelli in a Tyrrell, Stefan Johansson in a Ferrari, and Gerhard Berger in an Arrows BMW.
And Stefan Johansson moved away from Formula One and made a very successful career for himself, obviously, in IndyCar racing. running Penske chassis the last couple of seasons, will now move to a Reynard as we watch Panis in the Ligier. This may be the last time he drives this car because they are actively looking for potential stars of the future as Johnny Herbert peels off for his second pit stop, I believe.
He will almost certainly get back on the racetrack ahead of Eddie Irvine.
80th Grand Prix start for Johnny Herbert, his finest season ever. Can look back forever on the successes of this season, the British Grand Prix. What a magical day that was for a British driver. He manages to keep second place, 12.2 seconds. But what a great day he had in England. And then, of course, to go on and win in Monza, two of emotionally the greatest racing events he could have ever possibly have won, in Italy and in Britain.
And of course he already has a victory in the 24 Hours of Le Mans sports car race. Ooh, lurid moment there for Johnny Herbert. Meanwhile, Damon Hill went by while Herbert was pitting. That makes Damon Hill the only car on the lead lap.
And we believe he does have to make one more pit stop.
As a look at the driver's points, Schumacher will not score. As they stand right now, Damon Hill will come through with 69 to finish his season. Johnny Herbert will displace David Coulthard from third. Donna Lacey and Gerhard Berger both get into the top 6 in the Drivers' Championship in their final seasons with Ferrari.
I mentioned the Williams wind tunnel that is being moved as we go on board. These are great onboard shots, so let's just look over his shoulder for about half a second.
I'll keep talking. You go strangle the Australian director.
Will somebody please hit that director a whack over the back of the head and tell him how good those shots were earlier? I mentioned the wind tunnel. Williams are one of the few people in the world who have a 50% scale wind tunnel. They went to 50% because it was more accurate than anything else they had ever used, and now they have a wind tunnel that is so accurate, everything that it shows in the wind tunnel as an advantage or a disadvantage on the car tends to prove itself on the racetrack.
Let's take a look at our Haviland race recap. The leader is Damon Hill. You see he has led since lap 22, presently working lap 55. We have had 2 lead changes between 3 drivers, but lots of comings together for position behind them. And the list of cars out of the race is a fairly lengthy one, as 11 cars remain in the field, and they represent a long cross-section of the field. The only team with 2 cars still in the race is Tyrrell. Salo and Katayama, who run 8th and 9th.
Damon Hill, who looks forward to his next season. Michael Schumacher made the comment again this weekend that he hopes his Christmas present is that next season will not be as bad as most people predict. He says he does not expect to be world champion. That would leave this man here, Damon Hill, as the possible odds-on favorite to become world champion next year. He should have the car, the engine, the experience, the talent of Jacques Villeneuve to push him. And it's always good to have an experienced, fast teammate, or at least a fast teammate to push you along. So Damon Hill may be the favorite for World Championship wins next year. The man who likes to hide from the public eye. That's why he moved to Dublin, Ireland, where people don't really care who you are or what you do. Unless, of course, you're Irish like me. Then they just love everything you do. Is that right, Bob?
I'll comment when we return. Back in Adelaide, Australia, Eddie Irvine brings his Jordan Peugeot in from 3rd place.
If he can manage to hang on here, good stop. If he can hang on here, we'll equal his best ever Grand Prix finish. We watched him in Canada. The Jordans finished 2nd and 3rd. Barrichello, of course, went off earlier. We saw him crash into the tire barrier. Eddie Irvine, who celebrated his birthday here on Friday, 30 years old. The Jordan team arranged a birthday present of a run in a Jet Ranger helicopter. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to take it because everything got upset after Häkkinen's crash as Damon Hill peels in. Doesn't need anything dramatic here. Third pit stop. Fuels in. Oh, doesn't need anything dramatic. Doesn't need a problem.
Problem at the left front.
Whoa. He was a lap clear of Johnny Herbert. So he will not lose the lead. Now, is everything okay on that left front?
Is everything okay in the cockpit? I imagine Damon Hill's blood pressure just went up a few notches. He remains in first place.
Now, wouldn't that beat you sideways? If he had everything in control here and something silly like a wheel nut caused him to have another pit stop or caused him to have a serious mechanical problem. Johnny Herbert is on the same lap now as Damon Hill. So he managed to get himself on the same lap as the leader. During that pit stop, he's on lap 60. Damon Hill has just over 20 laps to go, and we think he's in the clear.
The last 20 laps here in Adelaide. Now, coming up later today, not here on ESPN, but on ESPN2, you can go from horsepower to foot power as 27,000 runners from around the world take to the streets of New York City in the greatest marathon in the world, the New York City Marathon. Its 26th running today at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Now, the projected weather for that race, cloudy, windy, and very cold, which raises a concern for hypothermia exposure problems among the runners, particularly the slow ones. So the New York City Marathon is going to be an interesting running this year. From overhead, Damon Hill trying to run out the string in the final edition of this race in Adelaide, and the memories just go on and on. Sad ones such as the rain, you may recall if you're a fan of Formula One here on ESPN. Back in the late 80s, we had those dramatic pictures of the late Ayrton Senna and the McLaren running right into the back of the Brabham of Martin Brundle, looming out of the rain. Or the 1986 race on the De Quetteville Terrace, right here, the Jack Brabham Straight, where Nigel Mansell's rear tire exploded, and with it, Nigel's shot at his first world championship, eventually won by Alain Prost. There's a look at Gianni Morbidelli, the first look we've had at him today. First look of any consequence, I should say.
Stellar job by Morbidelli, brought back into the team to replace Max Papis. Max Papis ran dry on the old sponsorship front, so Jackie Oliver said, if I have to put a driver choice in my car, I might put one in who's fast. And Morbidelli, who continues to try and establish himself as a front-running Grand Prix driver, having one of his better days. The footwork team so scarce on World Championship points this season. All second gear. Third. Through the S's. Second gear.
The cars reach top gear only twice on this circuit. The vast majority of the time is spent in third and fourth and even second gears in many of the slower corners. There is quite a party on tap here in Adelaide to top off the run of Grand Prix after 11 years. In fact, Bon Jovi is giving a concert when this race is over. It's all a part of the fun at Adelaide. We'll see you in a moment. Back in Adelaide, Australia, there is Eddie Irvine, presently shown in fourth position. He just made another pit stop. Something unusual and potentially bad is going on with Eddie Irvine's Jordan Peugeot.
And I think you can still hear a misfire as he went past one of the camera positions. But Eddie Irvine made a second stop to try and fix a mechanical problem in this Jordan, and I don't think it is right yet. Oh, he's back in the pit lane again. So he was about to enjoy a result equal to his best ever in Grand Prix racing, and he is back in again.
And no mechanics rush to the car except the jackman. Listen to the engine. The steering wheel comes off. On the previous pit stop, a crewman ran up and pushed a compressed air hose into the area where the air bottle is that runs the valve actuation system on that V10 Peugeot. They use compressed air to operate the valves, and my guess is that is what felled Eddie Irvine.
So now Panis is about to move up into third place. Morbidelli in the Footwork Arrows car goes into fourth. Blondell picks up fifth. And the Tyrrell of Mika Salo, about time he got some points for Uncle Ken, is in the top six at the moment with Pedro Lamy right behind him. Fourth through sixth are 2 laps down on this man here, Damon Hill. It was a jammed wheel nut, we are told, from the pit lane. A jammed wheel nut that is now tight and secure on the left front wheel of Damon Hill. So he's lucky that he doesn't have to make any more pit stop.
There's the third place car, the Ligier Mugen Honda of Olivier Panis.
The last Formula One car that I drove at Magny Cours.
Question is whether Olivier Panis will be driving it next year.
And although when I was at Magny Cours and at the factory, I didn't get a sneak look at next year's chassis, and although this one looks very similar to the Benetton, they assure me next year's car will look nothing like next year's Benetton. So Frank Durney, who's head of the design team for Tom Walkinshaw's team, is going his own way with the things he learned this season, trying to make a better and a faster Ligier.
Must be an exciting time for a Formula One team as the new car comes together.
He just ran over something.
I'm wondering if it's leaves.
I think it was leaves or paper or something. I don't think it was anything particularly hard. Katayama is 8th behind Pedro Lamy. So Herbert now has no real chance to catch Damon Hill unless Damon Hill gets himself into trouble or trips over some of the back markers. But Johnny Herbert doing exactly what he wanted to do as he locks up that right front. He came here saying, I would like to finish third in the World Championship. And he may well do that. Third in the World Championship. It isn't first, but it is pretty good.
And of course, it remains to be seen whether or not Johnny Herbert will be driving in Formula One next year.
80 Grand Prix starts. 2 wins, third in the World Championship, and unemployed. A funny business, this Grand Prix racing. If only talent was the only thing you measured how far a driver goes with, then so many people would go so much further. But racing is a funny old game that's dominated by machinery and commercialism. You have to be in the right place at the right time. And the number 2 driver to Schumacher, wherever he was up until now, has never been in the right place at the right time.
Johnny Herbert back into the Victoria Park horse racing circuit. Soon to be turned back over to the horses for good. We are back in Adelaide, Australia, where Damon Hill leads Johnny Herbert and Olivier Panis, the top 3 cars, the podium candidates at this juncture. Behind them, Gianni Morbidelli runs in 4th, Mark Blundell 5th, and Mika Salo 6th. Coming up later tonight on ESPN, NFL football as the Denver Broncos visit the Philadelphia Eagles. And given the weather on the East Coast recently, Remains to be seen what it's going to be like in Philadelphia tonight. It could be a very interesting game. It's coming your way live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on ESPN. The laps continue to dwindle down in the final race on the streets of Adelaide, Australia. Over 200,000 people in attendance. And there will be one gangbuster of a party to come tonight.
Some of the experienced engineers in Formula One are now becoming so valuable that there's lots of poaching going on, particularly in the engine building department. Recently, some Ferrari engineers went from Ferrari to Ilmore. Ferrari in return got 2 Peugeot engineers and 1 Renault V10 engineer, one of the few people to ever defect from the Renault V10 program. And also there's been offers, we believe, from McLaren to Adrian Newey, the very talented chief designer of this particular car here. Adrian Newey, of course, well known to many IndyCar fans and IndyCar paddocks and team owners after his successful stints at teams like Newman Haas and Krakow. He's the man responsible for designing this car under the guidance of Patrick Head, and it is believed that an offer of Johnny Herbert is in deep trouble, smoking heavily. A bonfire in an Australian barbecue in the back of the Benetton.
That is
so now Panis is up to second.
That's the drive shaft, you see. It looks like he sheared the drive shaft right at the differential. And my guess is that's oil burning. Interesting fire extinguisher they're using. It's a foam style.
Johnny Herbert will be absolutely disgusted. Now, what does that do to the championship? David Coulthard now will go back into third place in the World Championship. So a very costly barbecue for Johnny Herbert.
And with that, with Panis matching his best ever performance, at least at this juncture, we are down to 9 cars. And there is Pedro Lamy, who has moved up into the 6th and final points-paying position. Great for the young Portuguese driver.
Oh, and even better for that team, Minardi, who have spent so long this season trying to get valuable World Championship points. They're always delighted when they can simply out-qualify some of the big-budget teams. And P1 for Damon Hill, left 10. That means 10 laps left, and it showed him that P2 was Panis.
That means that Johnny Herbert will not overtake David Coulthard for the championship. There's Gianni Morbidelli, who has stepped up to the podium, the way things presently stand. And that would be great for the young son from the motorcycle racing family in Italy. Stay with us. Streets of Adelaide, Australia, the city of churches as it was once known, around the time of its founding back in the 1860s. Olivier Panis in the Ligier. Blue flag being shown to the man ahead of him in the Tyrrell. We're having a shifting of points now. Johnny Herbert has dropped out of the race, which secures David Coulthard's spot, 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. But with that Benetton out of the race, it also shuffles the Constructors' Championship standings.
And Panis just made a very quick pit stop. Now he needs to behave himself here. Will equal his best ever Grand Prix finishing. 2nd in Germany, you saw that graphic.
Eddie Irvine dropped out of the race moments ago. And that means that Ligier will bump Jordan from 5th place in the Constructors' Championship.
And one of the reasons why that will be significant is Ligier will be the only team in the top 5 that pays for the use of their engines. They contribute to Honda's expense of developing that Honda V10 engine that is serviced by Mugen, but their best result of the year for Ligier. Let's stay on board here with Damon Hill.
Wonder if Damon Hill thinks at all every time he goes by the spot where his championship evaporated last year in the collision with Michael Schumacher.
The problem is, Bob, when you get a lead like this and you don't really have any challengers, you do have a lot of time to think about what went on in the past and what might have been. So easily, he could have been our world champion last year if he just didn't make that lunge down the inside of Michael Schumacher, because Schumacher was already damaged, had hit the wall so hard, he was out anyway. But if... what do they say? Ifs and ands or pots and pans, there's no need for gypsies.
Now, I must say I haven't heard that one, but I'll write it down.
I might have to explain that. Gypsies in the old days in Ireland were the ones who fixed the holes in the pots and pans when your mother left it on the gas stove too long and burnt a hole in the end of it and didn't have enough money to buy another one. The gypsy came and fixed her for a couple of pence, and away you went again.
And away goes Damon Hill. You know, it's always when the race gets boring that you make mistakes, whether you're a driver or a commentator.
Commentators never make mistakes.
There you see Damon Hill's season of 95, at least in terms of victories. He could pick up his 4th with 7 laps remaining. 6 when Damon Hill crosses the start-finish line.
And he needed this. He needed to go into the winter with the result, a dominating performance like we see here, because irrespective of the fact that there is nobody to challenge him, he was running away from Schumacher anyway. He was trading fastest laps with David Coulthard. He did sit on the pole. He was the fastest man here all weekend. He needed that to go to Frank Williams and say, Frank, now, there you go. Despite what people say about trying to get rid of me, I am your man and we will go places together. And it's nice to have that confidence level when you go through the winter and then look forward to next season.
6 laps remaining for Damon Hill as he flashes through the Senna corners and on to Wakefield Terrace. We'll be back with more of the Grand Prix of Australia in just a moment. Australia, the second place Ligier Mugen Honda of Olivier Panis has a death rattle.
And there's no way that you go 4 laps with that amount of smoke and that noise.
Past the point where just 1 lap ago, we lost another car. Ukio Katayama's Tyrrell Yamaha gave up the ghost. And that brought us into a tie with the all-time greatest attrition in this race. We have 8 cars running, and that includes Monsieur Panis. So if he drops out, we will have set a new standard for casualties in this Grand Prix of Australia.
I can't imagine that he can make 5 more laps or 3 more laps with this thing as sick as it sounds. Great shots from our host broadcaster here at Channel 9 in Australia. Panis can see it. He's watching the blue smoke. It's Morbidelli who'll be chasing him. And he's a long, long way back. If he makes this, it is on a wing and a prayer.
We should apologize. We understand there may be video problems down the line. We're working to try to correct those. Meanwhile, Olivier Panis fighting for his best Formula One finish ever.
Running second. Look at that. 6 seconds off the pace, trying to nurse this baby home. Smoking heavily. I wonder, is it an exhaust header that's actually broken, and maybe that smoke is burning the bodywork? If that's the case, then he can't finish unless he sets the whole thing on fire.
I was going to say, except for that sort of flatulent sounding noise, the engine really doesn't sound all that bad. It's not missing. It's just got that very off song kind of
what he needs is Damon Hill to lap him and lap him again and have to do 1 less lap. That's Mika Salo you saw on the top of the picture there, running 5th for Ken Tyrrell.
And don't forget, coming up later today, the finale of the NASCAR Winston Cup season, the Napa 500, live at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time from Atlanta Motor Speedway in Hampton, Georgia. Jeff Gordon will start 8th. Dale Earnhardt, chasing him for the championship, will start 11th. And between them, the defending race winner, Mark Martin. Darrell Waltrip will start from pole. It should be a great race. The weather has cleared in Atlanta, and it should be great fun to watch.
Panis is going to catch a break here because Damon Hill is going to lap him. That will give him lap him again. That will give him one less lap to do. So that high-speed mosquito sprayer might be about to get a break here. Maybe he can nurse it home. Slow up. Let Damon Hill go by. One less lap to do.
You know, he's only getting those big puffs of smoke and certain parts of the track. I'm wondering, I'm beginning to think that it may be something terminally mechanical.
Move aside. He needs to move aside, let Damon Hill. Wave him through. Please, Damon, go ahead. What's he doing?
Oh, no, this is getting much worse.
Okay, one less lap to do. I believe he's at one more lap to do. Is that correct? Can he hang on? Can he hang on to equal to his best ever Grand Prix finish? Oh, he doesn't have too far to go. Morbidelli's catching him. Morbidelli is reeling him in. Blondella's 4th, Salo is 5th, Pedro Lamy is 6th. Pedro Denise is running 7th. If anything happens, Panis, maybe Denise could pick up the first World Championship point for the 40 team. He's now 11 seconds off the pace, and Morbidelli is reeling him in like gangbusters. Morbidelli, best finish ever was Germany 94. He finished 5th. Arrows throughout the whole season in 1995 has only scored 1 World Championship point. That was in Canada. It's 11 seconds. 11 seconds. Is that him in the top of the picture?
I believe it is. I believe that's Morbidelli.
He's almost home and dry.
I wonder if our friends from Australian television will pick up on that drama behind Damon Hill. Closing all the time is Morbidelli. Meanwhile, Damon Hill has 1 corner remaining, and you can hear the applause going up from this gargantuan crowd that has come to Adelaide for the final event. There you see the Ligier of Panis, who will take the flag in 2nd, and the Williams team is out by the pit wall to congratulate their man on a very well-earned victory.
There he is. Morbidelli does come across the line in 3rd place, and Smokey Joe manages to crawl across the line in 2nd place. Great result for the Ligier. Panis enjoys the accolades, waves to the crowd. I wouldn't get anywhere near him if I was behind him.
Part of the crowd bidding Formula One farewell in Adelaide. It has been a great run. And we look forward to the day 4 months from now when Melbourne, Australia will host a new era in Grand Prix racing down under. We'll be back with more from Adelaide in just a moment. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Formula One Grand Prix of Australia, has been brought to you by Toyota Motorsports. Our minds are always racing. On the podium, Damon Hill leads Olivier Panis and Gianni Morbidelli as they await the national anthems and then the awarding of the trophies. Here's a look at the final results. Damon Hill with his 4th victory of the season, the 13th of his career. I shorted him by 1 earlier. I hope he won't hold it against me. Only 8 classified finishers, matching the all-time lowest for this race, set in 1985 and matched in 1989. Michael Schumacher, the world champion. Damon Hill 2nd in the final driver points for 1995. David Coulthard 3rd, followed by Herbert, Alesi, and Berger. And there you see the rest of the Drivers' Championship. 18 drivers in all scoring points in 1995. Derek, your final thoughts.
The odds were against Damon Hill a little bit at the start of this race because only 4 times previously had the pole man gone on to win the race. He now makes it 5. But you know, even if Michael Schumacher, as we look at the constructors' points here, Benetton dominant, even if Schumacher had not been taken out by Alesi, I don't believe he was a match for Damon Hill this afternoon.
Checkered flag coverage of this Grand Prix of Australia will be coming your way December 10th at 2:30 p.m. And we also have a Formula One year in review coming your way here on ESPN on December 18th. Be sure to check your local listings for that. It has been a dramatic season full of twists and turns that began with the very first race of the year. We expect 1996 to be more of the same. We'll leave you with your own memories of the 1995 campaign, and we thank you for joining us for it. But we'll also leave with a salute to the 1995 World Driving Champion, Michael Schumacher of Germany. For Derek Daly and all of us here at ESPN Speed World, I'm Bob Varsha. We'll see you next year. So long, everyone.